Today we will be discussing, does love grow or fade in long distance relationships? So let's just go ahead and dive right into it. Gabby, let's talk about it. Again, Pillow Talk is where real and intimate conversations take place. So let's get right to it.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So in long distance relationships, do you feel that it's worth your time?
Um, you know me. I am the expert on long distance relationships. I've been in 3 of them before. People think I'm crazy. From what I hear a lot of just don't do it. Just don't do it. Why would anybody do that to themselves? But I found myself kind of preferring them.
Okay.
Not something, of course, that's good for the long term, but like I'm okay with them just because of my personality.
Wait, what is part of your personality? Why do you, why would you say you prefer a long distance relationship?
I think what it is I probably just like my space. Of course, when you're in a long distance relationship, you're taking more than a normal amount of time to just be with yourself, and you're just by yourself. Of course, you're communicating with that person, but you're not with that person the normal amount of time. And for me, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because being one of 5 kids and also being kind of like an introvert, I'm not opposed to like kind of hanging out with myself, or you know, being in my own space and doing things on my own time. So it works for me.
That's awesome. To have time for yourself, to really evaluate what it is that you want out of yourself, what can you bring to a long distance or a relationship in general. So my question to you, you said that you've been in a few long distance relationships.
Yeah.
So the people, I want to know, how successful are those relationships? What is the longest long distance relationship you've been in?
Okay, so currently I'm going on to my 3rd year with my boyfriend that I'm with right now.
Okay. Well, 3 years, you sure should be able to school us all on how to be successful in a long distance relationship.
Definitely took a lot of trial and error with the previous relationships, because the previous relationships were not successful. I would say that I probably wasn't ready, maybe not even to be in a relationship, but it's kind of like you take and you glean from the past, and you live and you learn, and you just keep on living, because it definitely made some mistakes in my previous long distance relationships. And going into the one that I'm in right now, I just told myself I'm not going to do what I did in the past. And not to say that all my relationships have been long distance, but just from those long distance relationships, just going into it with a new mindset, having learned from the past, putting those skills and those tools into place, and making sure my relationship can be as healthy as possible, given that it is long distance.
Right. Okay, so sometimes you meet someone, say you're on a trip, and you meet somebody and you exchange numbers, information, and then it's like, okay, you don't live in the same city, the same state as me. It's exciting.
It is.
In the beginning, I think, a lot of the times. So what is the most exciting part about a long distance relationship? What is something that you usually look forward to in a long distance relationship?
The traveling, of course.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know anybody who doesn't like to travel, but I love visiting new cities. I think something that I have had a tendency of doing is meeting like guys from the South or whatever. I love the South, and I'm in the South right now, obviously. So I came from California, moved to the South. So it's always cool to meet a guy from the South and, you know, get to travel and like meet up with him or whatever. But yeah, I think the traveling is just always super exciting. Just getting on a plane, the anticipation of going to see somebody or meeting up with them, you know, and you guys are meeting in a mutual place. And
that sounds, hold on, that sounds really sexy. Like, hey, baby, I'm going to be in this city at this time. Make sure you meet me there.
Right. You know,
Yeah.
logistically, it's not always as sexy, but sometimes it can be very sexy for sure. Absolutely. Nothing like hotel, you know.
Yeah. So some vacations are actually happening in long distance relationships to really plan that.
Yeah.
So it really takes some effort to be able to do so.
Oh yeah, you have to be intentional about it.
For sure.
Relationship.
For sure.
Absolutely.
So what about, say for example, have you ever experienced, okay, you're in a relationship right now, it's long distance, it's been 3 years. Have you ever met somebody and they were long distance, but you were like, no, I would not be willing to have a long distance relationship with that person?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, everybody don't get to everybody's not going to be worthy of that. You know what I mean? Like, some people, you categorize people, you know what I mean? And if you see potential, you see somebody who's worth it, go for it. You know what I mean? If you have the qualities in yourself or you're willing to do the long distance thing, and that person's worth it, yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Go for it. But everybody ain't worth it.
Okay, everyone is not worth your time. All right. So now that we have definitely discussed some of the exciting, the positive things about long distance, what would you say some drawbacks are about being, you know, in a long distance relationship?
Well, with long distance, of course, it's just a lot of time of you just, you know, being by yourself. And that's kind of the opposite of the idea of a relationship. You know what I mean? So no matter how introverted I am or to myself I am, I have those times where I'm like, gosh, I wish he was here, you know, today, or I wish, you know, he was by my side, or I wish I could experience this with him. I feel like I've been blessed to be able to spend a lot of time with him, and like we've been fortunate enough to be able to, you know, travel a lot almost at will and almost freely, but still there's just always those times where you're just like, you wish the person was there. So there's that loneliness aspect of it where you just kind of like have to swallow that constantly. Just be okay with being alone.
Right.
And then of course, no matter how, you know, secure you want to be, no matter how much communication there is, that trust thing always sneaks in there.
Yes. So with the trust piece, okay, one, being lonely. The lonely piece, like how, when you feel, and I know this for myself, this happens a lot, I don't really feel it throughout my day. I can be in the bed, I'm like ready to go to bed, but then I'm not sleepy. But then that's when your mind starts wandering. Then you're like, dang, I wish I wasn't by myself. I think that's when it tends to kick in. What is something that you do for yourself to kind of keep your mind off the loneliness with that?
You know, I think with the loneliness for me, it can come sometimes in a more of a physical aspect. Like you physically want the person there. But fortunately for me and my boyfriend, something that we established is like super, like excellent communication from the get-go. So I never feel too far from him. Like pick up the phone, like we can FaceTime all the time, constantly texting. So I always feel connected to him in a sense. But to combat like the physical loneliness or whatever, I just, you know, I just try to talk to him as much as I can, you know, and just stay occupied. You know, you'd be surprised how, like what you just said, just going about your regular day, you are by yourself. Like we are, you know, in these relationships, but at the end of the day, we're independent creatures, and we just gotta do things on our own by ourselves, and that keeps us occupied and it keeps us focused or whatever. So just keep it busy for sure, having friends and family and just different you know, satellite groups and stuff to, you know, keep your mind stimulated and stuff like that. Just keep it busy. You know?
Right. Okay, so go segueing into the trust factor. Do you feel that in not even long distance relationships, but specifically in long distance relationships, there is a certain level of trust that I think has to be already acquired in the beginning?
Oh yeah.
So what do you feel that trust factor lies in relationships as such?
Yeah. So if you're going to like be intentionally going into a long distance relationship, I I think you have to be willing to have like certain hard conversations very, very early on. Especially if you're trying to be serious about the relationship, or you're just trying to like lay the cards on the table about what it is that you want. I think it's nothing wrong with like having a relationship where it's long distance, like you're my main, but there's maybe an expectation that, you know, they're going to entertain other people, especially if you verbalize that and you say that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But if there's that expectation of monogamy, then you have to be able to not only ask the hard questions in the beginning, but be willing to be asked the hard questions, and be open and be honest and be vulnerable about them. Because if you can't, that's where the cracks open up, and that's where that like insecurity and that mistrust starts to seep in, because you're not being concrete, you're not being firm, you're not being specific about what you're talking about. It's like you're keeping it vague so you can keep a window open.
Right.
But it's just like, hey, this is what it is, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm not doing, this is what I expect of you, what do you expect of me?
Yes. That is so true with being able to have those hard conversations, because even regardless, me personally for myself, I learned that when someone's asking me a specific question, I get in defense mode. Like, why are you asking me that? Or, you know, and then I have to really take a step back to learn that, no, this person is wondering, so why not just answer the question and not feel like you're coming for me, that I have to be on defensive mode, because sometimes the shoe is on the other foot and now my mind is wondering and want to know, and it takes that to be able to be open with who you're with, to be able to communicate, and it helps to understand going forward.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what about the companionship, the lack thereof in long distance relationships? Do you feel that it makes room for someone else to come in, or it takes a strong individual to be able to handle not having that companionship?
Yeah, it definitely takes a strong individual to be able to handle that, because even in relationships where it's not long distance, you know, people are making room for other people. So it depends on how honest you're going to be with yourself and how you feel about that person, and how you feel that person is like checking off all the boxes and really fulfilling you, and really just making you feel like, oh, I got it, like I got what I need, I got what I want in this person. Because if you're not being honest with yourself about who that person is to you, then you might subconsciously be allowing other people to slip in, you know what I mean? So it's not just being honest with that person, you gotta be honest with yourself about how you really feel about that person and how worth it they are to you.
Right.
So yeah, you gotta be strong, but you also gotta know what you want and be sure about if that person is what you want.
Right. I definitely, when it comes to long distance relationships, for myself, I'm like, it's not something that I've always wanted to sign up for. I have experienced it, but I learned very quickly, for me, I'm like, yo, if we're going to be long distance, I need you to be able to communicate. Like you said, being able to pick up the phone, let's talk. It's not always texting. It's more than good morning, good night, and how's your day going? It's having in-depth conversations of how can we continue to grow, become intimate through our communication, even if we're not seeing each other. I've also found that sometimes men can tend to want us to lead the conversations on how in-depth it goes, but it takes two people to tango. But if two people are willing to put in the time, put in the effort, to trust, to communicate, and be open to travel, and, you know, grow that relationship, cultivate it, then it can work. But if there's someone that's giving, you know, 50, okay, and you trying to scroll up and doing 15%, that is not going to work.
Yeah.
So definitely it does depend on the two people.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've been in, like, I don't mind it, but with a specific person, I'm like, no, can't do it. Don't sign me up.
Right.
But again, it is take two people to decide on how in depth that's going to be.
Absolutely. Long distance is 100% and 100% going in. Because
Yes.
if one person's not into it, that other person is it's gonna be so apparent to that other person right away. Like, it just takes too much effort for it to be half-assed, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, don't go into it haphazardly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't.
So the ultimate question at the end of the day, does love fade or grow? Okay, you know the saying, does absence make the heart grow fonder? Or out of sight, out of mind? Gabrielle, we need your expertise with this 3 long years on this long distance relationship. Is it growing or is it fading?
So I definitely noticed in those periods of time where we were like anticipating in like the next couple weeks of seeing each other, we were like super lovey-dovey and like, oh gosh, I can't wait to see you. So there's that like anticipation and like excitement and, you know, eventually seeing that person. And it's always, I think you do definitely appreciate somebody more when you miss them. But I think that love is an action, and it's not something that just happens with you just like sitting there thinking about it. I know this is like cliche and we've heard it a million times, but you just have to wake up every day and you gotta choose that person. You have to choose to accept who that person is and appreciate them for their flaws, appreciate the situation that you're in with that person, appreciate the fact that the situation that you are in with that person is only going to make you stronger in the future with that person. Appreciate the fact that they love you and accept you in all your flaws and stuff like that. Then appreciate the fact that they're in this long distance craziness with you, you know? And with that, I think that when you focus on that, love definitely grows, because over time of doing that so much, you can't help but be like, oh my gosh, I'm so, you know, grateful for this person for, you know, running this crazy race with me. Love can't fade though. Love can't fade. If you're not feeding love, it's definitely gonna fade. If you're holding on to your preconceived notions and your mistrust and your past hurt, and if they, you know,
it can dwindle.
Absolutely. So it depends on what you feed. What are you feeding? Are you feeding the negativity? Or are you feeding the positive part of the relationship?
Right. So, in other words, what I heard you say, I'm not putting no words in your mouth, but what I'm hearing you say is love can grow, but it's not, we cannot look at love as if it's bubblegum and gumdrops.
No.
Like, it's not always pretty. It's like, sometimes it takes sticking in there with someone, no matter if they're irritating you today, you're not going to be like, oh, I just don't love this person anymore. It's us, like you say, when you're choosing this person every day, regardless of what's going on, that is the action, that is the love, instead of saying snip, 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 leave me alone. Yes, it's the stepping in the gap with me.
Absolutely. When you were talking, I actually started thinking about like a beautiful like rose or a beautiful plant. It's the actual like idea of it is beautiful. It's beautiful to look at, but in order to maintain that beauty, it takes work. You know, that rose doesn't just stay beautiful. That plant doesn't just stay beautiful, but you just looking at it and wishing that it does. Like, you gotta cultivate it. You gotta wake up every day. You gotta observe it. You gotta make sure, you know, it's getting everything that you need. It just takes work, and that's, I think that's kind of how it is with love. It's not, you can't wish it to grow. You can't will it to be what it is. It's an action word.
Yes.
Oh, it takes work.
Okay. And sacrifice.
Yes. Oh, yes.
You've been sacrificing your time. not that you're not getting anything in return,
Yeah.
but it's a lot of sacrifice in a long distance relationship.
Sacrifice,
Yes.
for sure. Sacrifice of mental sacrifice.
Yes.
Physical sacrifice, time sacrifice, that's for sure. And like I said, I'm just holding on to that hope that when we do come together, that it'll just make things all the more easy.
Yes.
You know, it'll make us all the more healthy. We'll have all these tools so that when other stuff comes at us, we'll have all the tools to, fight against all the stuff that's coming at us.
Yes, that is beautiful. So that is answered. Does love grow or fade? It does both. It does both, but it's about what you choose. Do you want your love to grow or do you want your love to fade? It's up to you. Remember, people, this is Pillow Talk. We're real and intimate conversations take place. It's your girl, Kay Carter, here with
Gabby.
Gabba Muffin. Make sure you follow her. Please like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next video here on Pillow Talk.
Bye, guys.